that's the problem. We have to figure out a way to process these people and give them a path to a legal status. And so people who aren't productive here and have no record of work or are criminals need to be deported. There's no question about that.
You know, who's a criminal?
Well, I mean a documented criminal.
They come in and nobody knows.
Well, you know, this is the discussion we need to have, is how we process these people. But they need to be processed, and we need comprehensive reform. In terms of our wars overseas, you know, you talked about the spending. We should only go to war when our vital interests are at stake, and our vital interests were not at stake in Iraq. When we go to war, and there's one other circumstance, when there's grave injustice and we can have a mission that we can accomplish, as in Kosovo. When we invade a country, like Afghanistan, where we should have gone in, I think, there's three phases. There's winning the war, there's stabilizing the country, and there's nation building. And we have never gotten to even though my opponent, the incumbent, says we're nation building there, I don't agree. We stumbled along for 8 years and never accomplished the stabilization mission. We need to stabilize the country, set us a timetable so that they know they're going to be responsible for the security of their country, continue the offensive mission against the extremists, and bring our troops home, and save all the money that's commensurate with that, and the lives of our troops. So, I hope that addresses the other part. Please, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, sir. First of all, I'd like to thank you for your service.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
And I see that you're trying to confront extremism. How would you vote on card check, for instance?
Extremism and card check. Which one do you want to talk about?
Well,
they're completely different.
I'm using your interest in confronting extremism as far as card check.
So you want to talk about unions?
Well, if you want to talk about unions.
I'll be happy to talk about unions. I'm a union member. And so when I go to the chambers, this comes up from time to time. I would tell you, the most unionized airline in our country is Southwest, which everyone seems to love and operates fairly well. In our district here, there's over 50 unions that operate, and there has been a conflict between private business and a union in over 10 years in our district. This whole assumption that unions are bad for business, I don't accept it. And I'll also tell you, I don't think you could get on an airplane and fly from A to B. In fact, I know it, unless the pilot union had made its input that it's made for the last 70 years or so. So the assumption that, and we can talk about the low end of wages too. In Las Vegas, the cooperative arrangement between unions and the hospitality industry and that runs Vegas, it wouldn't be where it was unless they cooperated and worked together and provided the quality of life that they do for those union members. So the whole assumption that unions are bad for business, I don't accept. So if that's the starting point, we can move on for that. As far as card check goes, there's three portions to that bill, and card check is one of the primary parts of the Employee Free Choice Act. There's been a compromise laid out. The employers want the ability to ask for an election, and the unions initially proposed that they not have the ability to ask for an election, that once a majority of members sign a card, then the union will organize at that company. And the compromise has been that there has to be a time limit, a short time limit, between the time that the election is asked for and the time it's conducted by the company. By the way, it doesn't take away the employee's right to hold an election. That right's never taken away. They can ask for an election, and that isn't being changed. So that compromise I support. The problem is that they would have a majority of employees sign the cards, the company would ask for an election and never conduct one, or conduct it so far down the road that there would be all sorts of education opportunities for the company, as they would call it, to affect the outcome of that election. So I support that compromise, and I think it's a good compromise.
What about, is there the secret ballot issue?
Well, if this compromise goes into place, there will be a secret ballot but they can be ordered by either side.
That's the thing that I heard about, that I wondered what you thought about having a secret ballot or not.
A secret ballot? Well, I support the compromise, which has a secret ballot. Good question, though. Yeah, really.
I return to a statement you made about the health
The question was about Medicare and what I said earlier. What I said, or what I should have said, I'm not sure what I said, but Medicare is the biggest program that has the biggest problem with deficit. In other words, Social Security, that program isn't in as dire straits as Medicare. So we have to address the spending in Medicare to get control of our federal deficit. And we have to become more efficient and reduce the amount of Medicare spending. Yes, I did say that. Well, they've proposed, through efficiencies, to take, like I said, $500 billion out of Medicare in the next 10 years. What they're doing is, we have a fee-based system. The doctors are paid every time you go there and every procedure that they perform. It's not an outcome-based system. So the only way to disincentivize that system is to reduce the fees that they're paid, so that they band together and you're paid eventually, they propose from their side, or through some sort of negotiation, that they be paid as a group for outcomes instead of a fee-based system. And the only way to do that is to ratchet down the fees that are paid. And so that's one of the major ways they've proposed to save money. That will eliminate unnecessary procedures and a whole host of other problems with Medicare. And Medicare, of course, sets the standard for a lot of non-Medicare practice.
I just wanted to get that clarified, because it sounds like you would reduce the Medicare payments to people who are old enough to qualify.
No.
Let me introduce another point with the health plan that was just passed. To me, one of the biggest problems we have is as we increase the number of people who will be eligible, in some communities, particularly outside the cities, there's going to be a shortage of doctors. And that's where the biggest problem is with this health care.
Shortage of doctors. Well, one of the, and this is a little bit off your point.
Not for us here in the city, but for people out in the country.
Yeah, the question was, are we going to have a shortage of doctors down the road? We already have a shortage of doctors in some areas, and so again, by rewarding outcomes, I think we should I think support the loans, government support of loans for short fields, and we already do that for doctors, but primary care physicians, and I think is what you're talking about.
Who work in rural areas.
Who work, they should have loan forgiveness or low-cost loans to go into the primary care field. And I think the primary care field will become hopefully more popular as we go to a more outcome-based system, instead of this specialties getting paid over and over again to generate procedures. So loans, that's one way, and of course this outcome-based system, I hope will cause incentives to avoid that. And one of the big scares with this whole healthcare reform was that they'll stop, doctors will stop accepting Medicare. You know, over 90% of doctors accept Medicare right now, the overwhelming number. When we talk about Medicare, doctors dropping Medicare, there aren't that many out there. There would have to be a huge change in the number of doctors who accept it, I think, to affect the whole system. So I think and I don't think that's going to happen.